The other thing I want to do is give you a little commercial from the OU about our upcoming marriage retreat that we've been holding. I think this is the 9th year in a row. There's cards out on the desk. It's a wonderful, wonderful program from June 11th to 13th. We have couples who come as newlyweds and couples who have been married for many, many decades. If you think that this is appropriate for you and a spouse, that's wonderful. If not, this is a wonderful, wonderful gift to give your children and or grandchildren, perhaps newlywed grandchildren, a beautiful gift that will be a gift for life. So just get in touch with us. You can get cards right outside. You can call our office. We are taking registrations now, but I will warn you, don't wait. I mean, over the weekend, I saw at least 5 or 6 couples registered over the weekend. The program does close out, and once it's closed, that's it. So I want to encourage you to think about this either for yourselves, for your children, and for your grandchildren. Okay, so without further ado, it is my pleasure to call upon our next speaker, Harriet Blank. I'm not going to waste a lot of time with Harriet's bio, which you probably received as you came in. And many of you know Harriet, who lives in the area. She's going to be speaking from Discord to Harmony, Navigating Diverse Family Relationships.
Hi, everyone. So, like Rabbi Billet, I wasn't 100% sure exactly where to talk, where to focus, because, navigating diverse family relationships, harmony and discord, it's a pretty long, pretty broad spectrum. So I hope that I will achieve some goals. I'm leaving time for questions because I find that questions really give you the richest amount of stuff, shall we say, and really what's going on. Because really, I'd like to know if people out here have burning questions. I'm sure someone else has the same burning question. So, since Judy did a little PR, I'll just do a little PR that I do work at OHEL. Our office for older adult services or thinking about questions is in the Gourmet Glot parking lot. For those of you who don't realize that, we have a storefront there, so you can just come in and ask questions. We have a caregiver support group that's really meeting in the rain and the snow this whole winter. I'm so happy to say that even in this yucky winter, we had women that came out every other week, no matter what the weather, to talk about what is it like to be a caregiver and what is it like to be a frum caregiver, since most of I think there's only one member who is not broadly defining herself as observant. And what is it like to be a caregiver when you're also sandwiched, and of course we call it the triple decker, because you might be caring for older family members and then there's under family members. There's children, grandchildren, and everyone else. And so there's that squish triple decker. We'll make it a new sandwich that they'll put in toddies. So, having said all that, those are things that we do have there. And we're also here to figure out what is it that the community wants. What are some of the issues that the 5 towns, the greater 5 towns, is asking for from OHEL. We've been around for 42 years. This is my push, because I've been doing geriatrics for a long time, that if you took care of children, children become teenagers, and teenagers become young adults, and guess what? People grow up, and if we are OHEL, a family service center, you need to think about older adults, because really, as I said when I was teaching in Charles PA school, how many people want to work with children? Everybody raised their hand, but 2. How many people want to work with older adults? 2 people raised their hands. I said, you're all going to have to deal with older adults, because grandparents take their grandchildren to the doctors, and there's no way you can avoid older adults, so just forget about it. So that's my plug. I have handouts for everybody, which I'm not giving till the end, because I was taught, don't give handouts out now, you're going to look at them. I want you to look at me, and you can have the handouts later, and it has everything you need to know, including a phone number on how to reach me. So if you either can't think of a question or you don't want to say it here, you can call me. I'm the only one that answers my line. I have 2 people here that work with me. Who answers my phone? Only me. So you don't have to worry about that. So to get started, I thought about what is family, and especially coming off of Mother's Day. Mother's Day, a day that altogether can give you more conflict and indigestion as well as happiness. And I could have almost done this whole speech on analyzing Mother's Day, but I'm not. But I have to say that how we deal with these things is something that I really do want to talk about. So I looked up navigating family relationships. First of all, what does it mean to be family? What is family? And there are so many definitions, but I decided to go by Webster's, the old-fashioned way. So what does it say? Family is a basic social unit consisting of parents and their children who are considered as a group. Because again, what that means has changed. Whether dwelling together or not, and I think that that is important, it's a social unit. And it continues on and on. We could be related by blood, we could be related by marriage. Some people count aunts, uncles, and cousins. But it is a social unit that we consider each other family. And the reason I thought, who cares? What does it mean to be family? And, we talk about what does family, and I always say, why am I still so close with the people I was friends with when I went to Israel? That year that you went to Israel? I said, because they became my family. If my family, and it wasn't like today, see, and I'm aging myself, along with my 99-cent glasses, by the way. I'm aging myself. If it wasn't like today, we didn't have cell phones where our children who go to Israel are communicating with us as they take a step. Or they get to the bus. Oh, I'm going on a bus now. Then you waited for the aerograms. You had to go to the post office, remember those days? And arrange the phone call. So those people that you were with, those were your family. And the truth be told, when I got married, I had 3 friends that flew in for the day. Chicago, from California, because finally I was getting married. So again, those are your family. And really what that also means is connection. How are you connected? And, we could go, because this is the Young Israel, we could even talk about the idea of kehillah, community, how we are connected, what are words talking about, what are Hebrew words talking about. So we really see that a family is really how also we are connected. So again, but then taking it even one step further, we have to acknowledge what does it mean? And Rabbi Billet kind of spoke a little bit about that, and I have a couple of comments, if I may. He's not here to defend or question me, but I have some comments about some of the things that he said. But where are we coming from? Where are our histories? There's about, I know we're Jewish, we can't count exactly, so there's between 45 and 50 people sitting in this room. We don't want ayin haras, because that's a whole other issue we could talk about. But having said all that, of everybody here, we're all different, and yet we have certain similarities. We all have family histories. We all have values. And even if there's a lot of shared values in this room, and shared values can be that I see people of, if I may be so bold, from all different generations that are here, people who are, and that's a whole nother topic. What does it really mean to be young and old? You can be young, old, middle old, and old. When I do that, the people who are in the middle-aged old, which is 75 to 85, they say, oh, middle-aged again, yay. So, and what does that mean in terms of their lives and how they're dealing with family relationships? So we have to acknowledge that we come from somewhere, and we all know that. What do we say? You had the same mother I had? I don't remember her saying that. What are you talking about? Daddy never did that. And you say to yourself, were we sisters? Were we brothers? And even spouses say the same thing. There are times when we would talk amongst each other, and I would say to my husband, well, your mother told me this. And he goes to me, this was not my mother you were talking to. I said, right, I'm talking to some strange lady off the street. Again, how we interpret the same thing is very, very unique because we are all unique. And that is, when we go back to, you should educate a person according to their level, al pi darko. This is really, there's so many ways where really our tradition is so rich with psychology. Sometimes when I give a Shabbos shir, I always take whatever's in the parsha and put a little psychology. It isn't that Freud came first or the Torah came first, but when you think about how much we really have to glean from where we are, it's like an amazing, really, you can find everything you want, I say, in the parsha. So that's like, but I say, where did I get that value from? That value came from my parents, who spent so much time and effort in making sure that we were educated, but not just educated, that we went to a certain kind of education, yeshiva, and each of us, even as we pick which yeshiva do we pick to, which high school we pick. Take here, we're blessed with many schools, and then sometimes we say, but I can't find one that I like because, we're Jews. Then, 2, 3, even 10 is not enough. There's always something wrong. But how we choose something will impact on the values of the next generation and on how we interact with each other. So we also have to acknowledge what are our goals, and I'm going to use that word over and over again. And in one of the works that we do in OHEL, we have this whole program, Nursing Home Waiver and Transition and Diversion. It sounds like fancy, but the main thing to think about is the goals. What are the goals you want to achieve if you're going to be living independently in the community? What are the goals? What are the goals? We say those words all the time, but I think that it's important to acknowledge that we do have goals, that we do have values, that there are certain things that are, I want to say, a line in the sand, where we can and can't go, and where is our bottom line. So we need to think about that when we deal with relationships, when we deal with whether it be siblings, children, extended families. And one of the topics, because one of the things I do for one of the programs that we have is speaking in different senior centers, I have a talk on how do you deal with daughter-in-laws or other family members you're not so sure about. And again, it's understanding how you feel and how you think they feel, and how then do you help them transmit the goal, what you want. But what's the bottom line? You really want a relationship. We all want a relationship with someone. So when we acknowledge what are our goals and what are our thoughts and what are our feelings, we then can allow, hopefully, some changes. We can allow some differences. And to remember that people come from extended family, or families we move into come from all sorts of backgrounds also. So, having said that, my handout, by the way, just so you know, is healthy relationships. How do you have them? And the most important thing to remember is communication is the key. And Rabbi Billet spoke about that. And we saw it in different views that he gave, examples from the Torah, from the Gemara, and from our traditional sources. If we don't know how to communicate, it isn't going to work. We are going to have discord and disharmony. And communication doesn't just mean speaking. Because I could talk and you could talk and nobody's listening and nobody's hearing. And anyone who's heard me ever talk, sometimes I actually do explain, like in the Chumash, there's different words for hearing. Like when we hear Azinu Hashamayim, V'tishma Haaretz. Like why? Why don't we use the same words? They're both saying, listen, Hazinu Hashamayim, listen heaven, and Tishma Haaretz, and listen earth. Why? They're both saying the same words. Because there's different kinds of listening. And so, being a social worker, I really do like this one. Azinu, listen with your ear. What does that really mean? Critical listening and really understanding. So if I tell you to do something, but I'm really not vested, I'm busy with, let's get real, and I'm busy on my phone, and I'm texting, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I'm telling my children, I want to have a family dinner where we all sit down and communicate as I'm on my iPad, not my iPad, I don't even have one, on my cell phone. Am I really communicating? What am I communicating with my children? Yeah, I want you all to sit down, but at my term. But meanwhile, I'm busy listening. Or when we say, and I'm guilty of this, by the way, we are. I'm not, because we're just talking about, there was a study that said adults are more addicted to their electronics than their children. And you say, no, I'm doing it for work. I'm really doing this for work. Or, you know what, I have to make sure because, Bubby is going to call me. And in case she calls me, I don't want to lose the message. Again, the mixed messages or what we're really trying to communicate. So communication is really key in terms of how we have healthy relationships. And so what happens now? We have our children. They grow up. I had a boss who was a mentor who said, I gave my children roots and wings. I gave them a foundation, and then they all ran away from me. They live in her children all lived in different parts of the United States. Or for us, maybe our children have moved to other parts of the United States because their spouse lived there, or it's more affordable to have an Orthodox lifestyle wherever they live, or they've made Aliyah, which I kind of thought we'd talk a little more about that before, or they've made Aliyah, which is really far. We might love Israel, but it's good to love Israel, but you're taking my grandchildren away from me? Like, can't you love Israel, but leave me the grandchildren? Okay, so how do we now go through all those things? How do we learn to speak up? How do we learn to respect each other? These are all the words. And one of them is saying, is this really my son? Where did he get this from? And sometimes he got it from us because he did model. You know, when we talk about being a caregiver, which is my real specialty, one of the main reasons people are caregivers for older adults is because they love the person. But there's also, I think, did this just go off? Yeah. You didn't like what I was going to say? It's back on. There's also a feeling of modeling and respect. It's too loud? Okay. I could go a little further. Oh, I think, okay. I'm reading my cues from people here. The other thing you could think about is modeling. You want your children to behave to you the way you are behaving to your parents. Or the opposite. You want to make sure that your children understand, don't behave. Don't let yourself happen to you what's happening to me. And in a caregiver support group, you very often hear caregivers say, I do this because I love my parents, I didn't love my parents, whatever the reasons. But I also tell my family members, if this happens to me, don't do the same as I'm doing. This is what I would prefer for you to do. So again, it's listening, it's hearing, it's understanding what kind of toll people take. And the thing with children, I just, again, in looking, because, also Judy was pretty vague in what she wanted to talk about, so I thought about what happens when our children are different than us. And different is like a very large word. Because at one point in my career, I worked in a hospital, and I was a supervisor in a neonatal ICU. And one of the most important things they told us is, it didn't matter what ethnic background a baby was, but when a baby's born, we all have the Gerber baby in mind. Am I dating myself? We all have in mind what that baby is going to look like, what the baby's is going to be like, the expectations. We have mapped out the whole life, and the baby is before the baby's even born, but for sure once the baby's born. And what happens when you have a child who unfortunately, and then hopefully will be fine, is in a NICU, a neonatal ICU, because there's an issue, there's a problem, and things like that. How do you then deal with what's real? Because we're real, we're human, and there's no one in this room that doesn't have expectations on how people, children, family members are going to behave. This is why Mother's Day is such a difficult day. Get back to Mother's Day. I'm sorry, Esty. Mother's Day is such a difficult day because we all have expectations. And many times our family members are the most guilty at not meeting the expectations we have. And sometimes that happens because for people who talk a lot, we don't really say what we really want, what we really need. And that is very difficult. It is very difficult. It is a lesson. It's a lesson I struggle with. It is something I think there's no one here who doesn't struggle with always being able to say, I need this, I need that, I don't really need that. And this is what I'd like from you. Now, just because you say you need it, by the way, doesn't mean you're going to get it. I just said you have to say what you want. It lessens some of it if you at least are honest to say, because then you can have that back to communication, the dialogue. Well, honey, you're not getting it. You know what? I need, and it could be very simple between spouses, I need a 7-bedroom house in case we have a lot of guests. Okay, well, we can only afford a 4-bedroom house. And I say it very simply, but let me tell you something. What people think they need and what they're going to get is the cause of a lot of disharmony in this world. And the same thing goes with children. When they talk about, I need this, I need to be able to go to Israel. Let's say your children are going to Israel. I have a child getting ready to go to Israel, and you hear, I need to be able to go to Israel with an iPad, a dozen pairs of Toms, I need a skirt, I need this, and I need. You need or you want. And what happens? And it's not even all about money. It's about also expectations on the values we want for people, for our children, for our families. How do you help transmit those expectations, those values, in a way that's healthy, normal, and then how do you step back when your children decide to take a different path? So on that path to Israel, we often hear, We consider ourselves modern Orthodox Jewish people. Our children come back and the fear is they're all going to flip out, or they're going to become more religious than us, or the opposite. There is the opposite. They're not going to be as observant. This isn't what you saw in my house. Why are you acting this way? And, not to the exact degree, but to a point, like Rabbi Billett spoke earlier about, don't let someone marry someone else, or a lifestyle. They want to learn for at least the next 7 years in yeshiva, and they don't necessarily have a career. We talk about this all the time. What are we going to do with that generation? How do we listen to them? How do we say, you have your way, I have my way, and is there any way that we can meet in the middle, or can we meet at all? If you've become Chol of Yisrael, these are very practical places where you can see a lot of discord. There's nothing worse than, I think, when people yell about, well, you're the Chol of Yisrael one, and you eat that one. And this happened at work once, where someone actually said, she explains to her grandchildren, we keep Chol of Yisrael, the other people, that stuff, that other milk isn't kosher. I said, isn't kosher? What a terrible thing. What message are you really telling your children, your grandchildren? I'm now treif? Think about that. And we had, you know what she said? You know what? I never thought about it. You never thought about it? Or you tell people that M&M's is now a treif food. Or I love that, and again, how we communicate these things. But then, how then do people see us? You're the kosher one, you're the treif one, you're the religious one, you're not so religious, you're modern, you're this. And I see this even with all the people talking about girls in tefillin in high school. All of a sudden, are you really religious or you're not religious? And I'm not here to make a polemic about whether you are or you're not. I'm just saying it's a question of where are we coming from, and I'm going to talk about where are we going. Not to sound businesslike, but what is our bottom line when we have family relationships? So I'm going to say that I hope our bottom line is love and caring and the continuation of our generations. There's nothing better, even though this is me saying, is to see multiple generations together. I'm a HAL parent, so my favorite event, if any of you guys are HAL parents or were or grandparents, my favorite event of HAL is the Midor Lador that they do for 4th grade girls, where it's all the generations of the girls come together with their grandmothers, their great-grandmothers, their moms, and everyone's coming together, and we all sit together, sing together, and whatever, and make happy. Okay, because there is something to be said about finding that thread that binds us together. And so I'm saying when someone becomes, quote unquote, more from, whatever that means, or less from, is there a way to still find the string, God bless you, the thread that holds us together? And how do we do that? Back to my handout. Healthy relationships, communication, but not being a wimp or a wuss. We do have a right to speak up. You want to learn for 20 years without having any source of income? That's nice. Well, how are you going to support your family? Are you able to have that conversation? Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that they're going to listen to you. But you need to be able to speak up and to say, you have a right, but you don't have a right to expect me to support you. And financially support you. Because here we are in discord. Here we're saying, this is not the way I was raised. This is not what I want. When it comes time, you don't believe in TV and I believe in TV. You go to movies, I go to shows, you don't. These are little family things that can cause a lot of fight because as bubbies, or altar bubbies, or even young grandmothers and grandfathers, or whatever you're called, there's a name for everything. You need to think, how are you going to develop your relationship? And you need to think back to the warm memories as well as the not so warm memories. It's good. I think negative learning is good too. What didn't work? And how can you make it work better? Because that's one of the other things that we all now can have, is we can repair things that were not so good. How can we make them better? Because especially as we see younger and younger grandparents, and grandparents who can be more involved or less involved, or have the ability to be a more vibrant part of life, or parents a more part of a kid's life. How can you change some of the things that you saw growing up that you didn't think worked so well? Because, you know what, I'm not a total Pollyanna. Some things don't work so well. The other example, though, I want to say for grandparents is that how do you learn to say no to your children when they say, can't you please, or maybe you could, I'd like to go away this weekend. Could you watch the children, the grandchildren? Can you take in maybe 10 people? And by the way, this is the list of, and God knows, this is the list of weekend activities they have. Do you mind driving? Don't worry. They're very good at getting into their car seats. Again, how do we learn to say no? You know, if I retired, this is spirit. If we want to remake ourselves, if we want to have opportunities to try new and different things, do I really want to become a mother a second time around? It's a question. Now, for some people, the answer is going to be yes. I live to help my children. That's all I want to do. But for some people, they might say, this is a time for me. This is a time for me and my spouse to reconnect. The person who was my boss with the wings and the roots and all those other kinds of things, her husband owned a clothing store, and he worked 7 days a week. We're not here for poskening here. He worked 7 days a week in this business. He was there morning to night. No, a retail store takes a lot of your time. When he finally retired for a number of reasons, he was actually clinically depressed. He had no idea what should he do with himself. So he figured out what did he like. He had a social worker for a wife whose skills were in older adults, so she just took care of him. And she told him, what are the things you like to do besides going to see a therapist and maybe a little medication? And he always liked art. He always wished he could do something with his hands. And they had a home in Maine for the summer. And from there, he started creating things from driftwood and all kinds of other things. But since he was a salesperson by profession, he sold it to all kinds of stores in Brooklyn. And he recreated himself, and he had a great time. They didn't just go to their grandchildren. They didn't just do, give them money without thinking. They figured out what did they want to do. And again, I bring this up as an idea is that there's, when you hear people saying, you're retired, oh, are you going to help out with your children now? Are you traveling? Are you not traveling? Are you going to Florida? Maybe you don't want to go to Florida. My grandparents used to say they're not going to Florida because that's the land of, what did they used to say? It's the land of, ambulances, and they're waiting to die. Now, that was a long time ago, and life is different because I was just telling someone, if you really, the truth is Florida is one of the worst places to be if you're really old. That's the 85 plus, the fastest growing older adults, because the services are not as good there. But another talk, and that's not what you had me come for. So the other thing to think about is finances. Finances cause a lot of fights amongst family members. Again, not just who has more, who has not, but could you give? Or can you never stop giving? We now, all of us who have younger families, look at our tuition bills. And how many times do people say, maybe they can give us? Or we look to our families to bail us out. Is that right? Do you want to bail us out? Does that make you an evil person if you say no? Just saying no? Not necessarily. Sometimes you have to say, are you saving? And are you saving? Because, Rabbi Billa talked about the caregiving issues and how abandonment and caring and what does it mean. And the truth is, it's that's a whole topic into of itself, but also the planning and what does it really mean to be giving good care. So I just can't help but not comment on that we do really have to think. And again, it's back to expectations. I'm your mother, I'm your father. I took care of you. I expect you to take care of me. And any of you who are children of survivors or survivors yourself, there's a whole nother level here about, for this I got saved, for this these people didn't get saved. And the other issue which I bring up is, survivors, they actually never saw as many older adults because, people who were children of survivors often did not have grandparents because unfortunately they didn't make it through. And their parents, they don't know how to be grandparents necessarily. It sounds funny to say that. Like, is there a book on how to be a grandmother, how to be an aunt? But there is something to know. What does it mean? It means you raise your children, I'm raising my children, and you can give me advice if I ask. And you can even give me advice if I don't, and you will, but please remember, I don't have to take it. I don't have to take it. And if I don't want to take it, it doesn't mean that I'm being rude, disrespectful, or nasty. It means this is the life I envision. I took from you, and it's inside of me. You might not agree with me, but now from here, I'm taking it to another level, to another step, which we all have the ability to do. Now, that we also could say, I need to distance myself because you made me feel guilty, angry, and bad about myself. Again, a whole nother topic of conversation. And how then are we caring for people who really we don't like so much, or who caused us a lot of psychic pain? You didn't make me feel good about myself, whether that be two spouses. You can be married for 40, 50 years and really not like each other. You can love each other, but you don't have to like each other. And that's a very powerful statement, because love, as we heard from Rabbi Billet, comes for many reasons. You could have actually thought this person, you liked them physically, and they were good for you religiously. Okay, I'm going to go for that line that Rabbi Billet used from OHEL there. But that didn't mean you were a nice person. It didn't really mean you were nice to me. So then how do we then deal with the difficulties that come about older adulthood, and also the caregiving issues, the day in, the day out? I had a caregiver say to me last week, this isn't what I signed up to do. This isn't what I thought was going to be happening. And the same thing for children. When children say, I didn't think I'd have to do this. Or the opposite way. Again, I talked about expectations. I thought that all I had to do was give my children a good education and then be fine. I still need to help them. I still need to be involved with them to a degree that I didn't expect to be. How do we then balance all those things? And lifestyles. Again, lifestyles. And we talk about what happens when someone's less religious. You know, we're talking about when they're more religious and when they're less religious. And sometimes we say we actually prefer them a little less religious than more religious. Again, it has to do with understanding, the understanding that we have. So again, how do we handle all those kinds of things? You know, I go, because this is Young Israel, I said, we could be like Hillel and say, let's answer everything on one foot. So again, and I said it before, I say it again, communication is key, and knowing the goals. What is the goal of how you want to handle yourself, your family members, your spouse? And so with that, I say, what do we need to do? We need to say, what do we want to get from this? We want to be interested in what other people are saying. We need to constantly ask questions. How many times do we have fights with our children because we thought one thing, and again, it's expectations, they thought another thing, and nobody talked to each other. Nobody understood what the other person meant. I thought that getting together for Pesach meant everybody was going to help with the cooking and the cleaning and the shopping. I didn't think it meant that everyone was going to come to my house and say, I'm coming with cupcakes. I'm coming with dessert. And you guys, and don't worry, you know what? I'll do some dishes. I'll do dishes. Did you really talk about what were your expectations? Did you talk about what it was you had to meet? And in preparing for this, and I saw this in one of the, I think I saw it in the Jewish Home, you know, Friday night reading. And so I said, they had a thing about where the grandparents were taking everybody away for Pesach. We just finished Pesach, so, you know, we can still talk Pesach jokes. And taking everyone away for Pesach. And the daughter-in-law was very excited. She was going to be going away, and the grandparents were paying for everything. And the daughter-in-law, who works very hard, and the son, they were very excited. They were going to be sitting by the pool and relaxing, and the kids were going to go to daycare, and they weren't going to have to think about them. And the grandparents' idea was, no, we're going to sit together. We're going to sit in the lobby. I'm going to show you off to my friends. You're going to hear who they are. And their expectations were not the same. Again, but you could say, but wait a second. I paid for you to come. And does paying, and that's the loaded question, does helping somebody, if you are helping your children, if your children have decided they want to go away with you and you pay for them, does that mean they have to do whatever you say? If your children you have decided your children are going to learn for the next 4 or 5 years after they're married, does that mean you have a right to say where are they going to live, what are they going to buy? Are they allowed to take a vacation? Or maybe even worse, are they going to move closer to the other side who didn't give as much financial support? See, I know my audience. What is it that we're really looking for? And how do we then say what it is that we want? These are the common kinds of questions. So I'm going to just read them quickly, because I want questions or thoughts or whatever. And then the other thing I gave is just something that I thought was funny and something that speaks to me. So healthy relationships, of course, it is speak up. And that is a hard thing. Even I, who can speak, usually, do not always know how to speak up. It's a process. It's something I've gotten better at, and I've learned to do better by being disappointed, upset, and angry, and realizing that that is not going to work. Because even with someone you love, even with your spouse, even with your children, we are not mind readers. We are not Nevi'im or Nevi'ot that can really see what people are thinking. We really need to respect each other. And this, to me, is a cornerstone. We need to say, I might not agree. I agree to disagree. But we have to say respect, because we have to think whether a kid is becoming more religious, less religious, working in a job that is totally not what we like. If they decided they wanted to be a rabbi over a doctor, we have to say that they're coming from a place of integrity and honesty, because they're our children. We raised them. We have to hope that we did a good job. Compromise. Compromise is a hard one. Can we compromise? Can we say that, okay, they'll come to me for Pesach and they'll come to you for Shavuos? Because I have to say that I sometimes see when they talk about every other holiday, you're going to switch off and things like that. It doesn't always work so easily that way. There are reasons. I always say we have 2-day yontifs and people should live near each other, so we could really see, are we Gumby? Why we are heavy? It doesn't make sense. We should be so skinny from trying to stretch ourselves. Be supportive. As long as someone's not doing anything bad, can we support someone else's decisions? I wanted you to be a rocket scientist, and you want to be a philosopher? Okay. Privacy. We do really need to understand that people have a right to privacy. People have a right also to not have us tell them everything to do, and not even tell us everything. I'm your mother. What do you mean you're not going to tell me everything that's going on in your life? Okay, so what if you're 62? Because it does not change. When my grandmother was when my grandmother was like in her 90s or something like that, and my father, we were talking about how her hair became white, and my father said, really? It happened overnight. I go, really? Didn't she always have red hair? Again, we see our parents in a certain way, which is why I say that. We have an idea of who our parents are. And we don't necessarily see the changes, or do we want to believe in the changes? By the way, that's why caregivers have such a hard time, caregivers who live close by versus the caregiver who comes in. We make lots of jokes about the daughter who's slaving and helping her mom, and then the son comes in from California and Israel, and they say, oh, he's such a saint. He came in, a tzaddik in our time. And you're saying, as you're wiping the sweat off your brow, really? But Dan l'kafschus, or to recognize the other side, that person can see things that we can't. It's hard to say that when they're saying those lines. And just to let you know that when I say that in Harlem and when I say it in Borough Park, everyone says to me, you know my brother? So that is the universe of caregiving issues. But also, be realistic. Again, I said that's the bottom line. Be realistic. And we want to develop good histories for our families. Because again, what is our goal? Our goal is love and caring for each other. And the other thing that I'm giving out, and then I'm going to open it up for questions, thoughts, and some people said to me they had some questions, because some people know who I am. I will stay for a while if people have private questions or thoughts that they want to ask. But the other thing I gave is, it is the Bill of Rights for parents of adult children, And I really read this and thought it was really funny. So, because one of the things, we talk about Bill of Rights. We're in the United States. I'm helping my son study for APUSH, that's American history. And I was proud to say that at the test, I think I got at least a 90. So I was really proud how much I remember. But a lot of talking about the Bill of Rights. And from Bill of Rights, there are Bill of Rights for everything. You go to a hospital, there's a patient Bill of Rights. There's a Bill of Rights for workers. There's a Bill of Rights, a caregiver Bill of Rights, which we talk about and which I give out. But I also know, because I've done something similar to this talk once before, there's also a Bill of Rights for adult children, which actually, there's other websites. If you ever want a little laugh about some of this, this is very funny. I'm giving it out, but I'm just going to read it quickly because it does spark thinking. You have a right to be free of abuse, because I did not talk about that. There are times when you can be psychologically, physically, financially, in every which way abused by your adult children. So that is number one. Abuse is never acceptable. Not by you to give and not by you to receive. You have a right to be guilt-free. You like that one? We all can be guilt-free. We should all take the own advice. But we do have a right not to be manipulated. We have a right to have peace of mind. We have a right to decide when do we want freedom from even our children. You have a right to have reasonable expectations, and this is an important one when we navigate relationships. We have a right to be imperfect. No one ever said they were perfect, but guess what? I make mistakes too. I say this to my children all the time. I can only try my best. I cannot promise perfection. As a matter of fact, I can guarantee I'm not going to be perfect. So if that's what you're expecting, go back to the storybooks, go back to the TV shows, and go back to the movies. There is no such thing as the perfect mother, or the perfect father, the perfect spouse, the perfect anything, because imperfection is what the name of the game. And that is where we can go back to our traditions and see even Avraham, even Shlomo, even David, the Gedolei, Moshe Rabbeinu, he was not always considered the best parent. He was a great leader, but he failed parenting 101. Okay, we can say that, but that does not take away from other important parts of who we are. We have a right to do what we want with our own money. And as people become older and children become older, and there's so much more financial stresses on everybody, it goes, by the way, both ways. In this land, we have an elder care lawyer here. We are not responsible to take care of our children or our parents. There might be an ethical responsibility that you feel at a time, but as I always say, not to take your thunder, you can be Donald Trump and possibly get on Medicaid tomorrow. So, having said those things, there are things we can and can't do. And you have the right to decide how to spend your time. All of you decided to spend your time here today, and I hope it was a good time and well worth it. Selective association, you have a right to decide who do you want to associate with. I don't like some people. And you talk about this as you become older, that you realize you don't have to like everyone. You can be who you are. I can dress the way I want to dress, and I can be who I am. Take it or leave it. This is what you got. So there. We can say this to our kids, to our friends, and to whomever. There is something to be said about, I don't want to say growing old, but I would say maturing. And of course, we always have the right to say no, and that is another important lesson. So these are my handouts that I have, but to remember that when there is disharmony, there can be disharmony because we're stressed, because we're trying to do too many things, and to be too many things. And when we are stressed, we do not see things properly. Things become distorted. The things people say to us, we become very sensitive, we become very critical. Why are you saying this? You're becoming overcritical of me. And we don't even, back to what I said originally, we don't hear well. We don't hear what we're saying. So when my child says to me, Ma, we decided we're Chol of Yisrael. Oh, I'm not kosher enough for you? Or, again, and I know I speak from people I had, where one of my friends said, her daughter said, I'm sorry, Ma. And, she's like, 6 generations, rabbis and everything. We can't eat your chicken soup anymore because we don't like the way you clean your dill. And she said, my dill? But you like my pocketbook. Again, how do we handle this? What do we say? And so you can say, in your house, clean your dill the way you feel comfortable. In my house, just don't drink my chicken soup. And how can we not personalize someone who would say something like that? And then how do we help ourselves understand respect? Because if we speak back to respect, let's take that dill question here. If we speak to somebody in a respectful way, I appreciate, I understand you learn, blah, 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 whatever the reasoning is, I learn differently. In my house, we do things my way. In your house, we'll do things your way. So in your house, you clean your dill and you can show me. You can show me. Because maybe it's true. There's new technology, new whatever. But let's agree to disagree. Let's agree to be respectful. Now, if the daughter came in and said, everything's trafe in your house, that's a problem, because then also you know the grandchildren are going to hear this, and what is the message? But again, how we give the message is the important part. How we give the message, how we get the message, how we receive, I'm telling you, we really have to hear well. And considering hearing loss is a normal part of aging, we really have to fine-tune it when we're younger, because when we get older, we have to listen in a different way. So does anyone have any questions, thoughts? Nothing? Yes, you have a question.
I'll just say something.
Comments?
Is it possible to have a healthy Jewish family?
Of course. He asked, is it possible to have a healthy Jewish person? Family. He said person too. Okay, of course there is. Okay, I hope I have enough. And if not, I can always make more and leave them here. Is it possible? Of course it is. How are we healthy? The first thing is to admit imperfection. So being healthy means that you can admit that there are differences in different people, that we can agree to disagree, we can have privacy, we accept people's differences, and we want to have a relationship. Again, the bottom, what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is that we love the person, we want to be connected. Man cannot live alone. And I'm not here to talk about should you get married, should you not get married, but the need for relationships is such a fundamental source for us people. That's what makes people people. We need each other. We don't always do well by ourselves. So the ability to accept changes, now again, and to accept that people are different, but that we love each other, but we love our differences.
Okay, well,
Yes?
also, when you said about guilt, you could also be without the guilt as another option.
Guilt? Oh, dill. Right, leave out the dill. But that's compromise. I use that as an example. By the way, that's what my friend did. She left out the dill. She left out the dill when her daughter comes. But yes, in your answer, there is healthy, I saw your hand, there is healthy relationships, healthy family, as long as we understand that, look, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. There are different ways. And if we can be honest with ourselves that there is not one way, and what is our ultimate goal? I keep on saying that till you're going to say, what's the matter? Does she have Alzheimer's disease? Because the ultimate goal is to love and to have connections. And how we achieve it is going to be different for everyone here.
I have a policy that I've espoused for many, many years, and it says that do not expect anything, and you won't be disappointed. You have to start every discussion with that in mind, because if you're not going to be disappointed, then you have an opportunity to discuss things in a normal fashion. If you start out disappointed, then you're going to have the problems you were talking about earlier.
Right, I think that there's something to be said. Don't expect anything, but I think but it's very hard to live without any expectations. I agree with what you're saying, but I think taking it even a step further, it's the ability to discuss. And I think that
I'm not saying don't discuss.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's right, but but I think you're right, because what happens, and especially nowadays, our expectations have been made so great by, whether it be Hollywood, whether it be by TV, whether it be expectations of other people, that our expectations are larger than life. and not realistic anymore, but I think you're right. If you expect nothing, you'll be very surprised. So like that's why yesterday my 14-year-old expecting nothing, when I came home from taking my high schooler to school, I came home and he made my bed because I didn't expect it, and it was the best present I got yesterday. He made my bed. Any other questions or comments? Yes? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Say what? I didn't hear the end part. Okay. Right, I agree with you. Helping people understand that people can make mistakes, people can be different, is a very important lesson. It's probably a fundamental lesson that we can give each other because we want to do it right. And there's no one in this room that's not guilty of that. We want to be the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother, the perfect worker, the perfect daughter, the perfect, we could keep on going. That's why I'll never be unemployed. I might not make a lot of money, but I'll never be unemployed because people come looking for a way to get there. And the gentleman who said, the bar, maybe we need to lower the bar for ourselves. And then to help other people understand that, not that you shouldn't achieve the greatest you can achieve, but don't beat yourself if what you're asking for is not something that's realistic. So when you, and women especially, when we talk about we want to have it all. I want to be the greatest mother, daughter, grandmother, worker, caregiver, whatever. You can't. So that's why we have sometimes takeout. That's why sometimes we have help. Having help in the home, if you're caring for, whether it be a child or an older adult, is an important piece. When I was young and more stupid, I used to think that everyone had to be home to take care of their children, because how could you not? My mother was home, that's what I saw. And I had a friend who could have stayed home financially. There was no reason for her to go to work from a financial point of view, but then I saw she needed to go to work. Because psychologically, she was a lousy mother being home. She was a lot better when she had the nanny and she went back to work as a nurse and then came home and interacted with her children in a way that was better for her. It was a very important lesson I taught myself by saying never make mistakes, change, reevaluate. And that's why we have help. That's why we have everything. Yes?
I'm just going to add the value of humor. Oh,
I thought your speech was outstanding. You got a lot out of it. I want to know if it was recorded.
Yes, I think they recorded it. Yes, humor. Oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
it's not, sometimes it's just the best thing you can do in a situation.
100% humor.
Not taking yourself too seriously. I don't mean making fun of anyone, but just sort of lightening the mood and just injecting.
And I hope that that's something that Neil will talk about as well as Rabbi Hain. Yes, humor. Humor is very important. I don't tell jokes because I found out I'm not a good joke teller. You have to know yourself. But humor is very important. And understanding that as serious as something is, let's say, but not to make fun of a person. So like when your kid comes home, think about all of us who've had little kids and they come home and they didn't get, because I can even think about it for myself. Oh, when I came home and I had a bad mark on conduct, do I look like I just had a bad mark on conduct recently? But I remember it as if it was yesterday. And I was so upset and crying now, instead of my mother laughing at me like, okay, really? You got, on a progress report, I remember I got a C in conduct. Okay, you take it seriously. She listened to me. She made me see light of it. I move on and tell the story a few years later. Humor is very important, and how we use humor for ourselves and for others is important, and lightening up the subject. We talk about that all the time. How can you still see the gift of fun? And having fun, which of course is another topic, so I don't want to talk about it. But the gift of fun And that's part of what friendships are. And friendships can be love ships and friendships. I made that word up just now. So thank you. See, I'm glad you pointed it out that I forgot it in my notes. Thank you. Yes?
My daughter recently became mom's sugar,
Uh-huh.
and she takes it so seriously to the point of really almost nervousness.
Uh-huh.
And I was there, and I was helping her with the dishes in the sink, and I picked up the woman's sponge. And she went ballistic. And I just looked at her, shook my head, and I said, if you are so religious, remember the Ten Commandments, honor thy mother and thy father.
That's true. But remember, when someone is new at doing something, they're not comfortable yet in their own skin. And it's perfectly fine what you said, and I think that we need to remind people those things. But remember, whenever we take on anything new, whether it be something with religion, whether it be you want to try out a new recipe, it could be stupid like that, you're a caregiver, you're now doing serious things. If you're not comfortable, we sometimes become overzealous. And that is because we're still not comfortable. And sometimes the best thing to do is say, thank you, ignore, thank you, or I'm going to try to be more careful. Oh, I didn't notice. And forgetting this overzealous, I think blue is more dairy. My mother-in-law thinks blue is more meat. Now, where is this coming from? This is like craziness. But it's the value we have. I think, and I used to think growing up that I thought certain dishes look milchik and certain dishes look fleishik. Now, the rest of the world doesn't keep kosher. So I know that dishes were not designed with milchiks and fleishiks in mind. I thought about that years later. How stupid was I? This is a dairy pattern. Really? Again, it's how we think about things. So your daughter-in-law, you said, as she's becoming more from, she's not comfortable. She's so afraid she's going to make a mistake that she's overcritical. So when people do that, you just say, next time we should all be more careful. And make a joke. Humor, as she said.
We can continue after. I know that there are some people that probably have other appointments. Maybe people are picking up grandchildren. So we don't want to interfere with that. We hope that you've learned a lot. Please give us your evaluations, bring us your friends, and looking forward to seeing you.
And if anyone would like a caregiver support group in the day or at night, we do have one in the evening, but we're looking for a day one. We'd like to start because we know you stop in, but groups have value.